The Journey to Athens. Theseus was warned by passerbys and local inhabitants not to take the long, savage road to Athens. He was told that the first horrible man he would meet was Periphetes, also known as the Clubman. Periphetes clubbed the men and women to death if they dared to walk along the road. Theseus, armed with the knowledge of Periphetes, used the man's own club to turn the tables. Theseus killed Periphetes. He then took the club to add to his own arsenal of weapons. Theseus then walked on toward Athens. Next he came upon Isthmus, the pine bender. Isthmus loved to grab travelers and then tie them to 2 pine trees, one arm to one bent tree, a second arm to a second bent tree, each tree tied down with ropes. Isthmus would then cut the ropes, thus tearing his victims asunder. Theseus surprised Isthmus by grabbing him before Isthmus had a chance to grab Theseus. He then paid Isthmus a great compliment by tying him to 2 bent pine trees, cutting the ropes to rip Isthmus into 2 pieces. In villages along the road to Athens, word began to filter through that a hero was coming. Stories were told that a man who had outwitted and then killed 2 of the infamous murdering thugs reached the inhabitants. The third wickedness was the sow of Chromion, a man-eating beast that took joy in the destruction of human flesh. Theseus whacked the sow with his sword, ending its ferocious life and clearing yet another stretch of the road along the Isthmus. Theseus next approached the Skeiron cliffs, famed for death by Skeiron, who bade travelers to wash his feet at the edge of the cliffs. Any unsuspecting traveler who complied found himself kicked off the cliff to land in the water where a giant man-eating turtle devoured him. Theseus, aware of Skeiron's modus operandi, pretended to comply with Skeiron's wish. Theseus bent down as if to wash the other man's feet. But instead of washing Skeiron's feet, he grabbed his ankle, pulling Skeiron off his feet. He then shoved him off the cliff so that the turtle would devour Skeiron. And so he did. Theseus's fame spread. In Athens, they began to hear, in trickles of street talk, of a young man who destroyed wickedness along the road to Athens. Aegeus the king was curious as to who this man was. His third wife, who was Medea, the very same Medea that had helped Jason win the Golden Fleece, she who was a seer was also the mother of Prince Mados, Aegeus's only legitimate son. Medea knew who the young man that traveled the Isthmus was. She feared him. As Theseus neared Attica, he was confronted by Cercyon, who killed his victims by wrestling them to death. Theseus, an excellent wrestler in his own right, wrestled Cercyon to death. Next came Procrustes, the hammerer. Procrustes' habit was to invite travelers to rest in his bed. If the traveler fit the bed perfectly, he lived. If not, to fit the bed, the short man was stretched out by hammering. A tall man would be cut down to size, Either way, the poor nomad was killed. Theseus was invited to spend the night in Procrustes' house. As the sun set, Theseus grabbed the hammerer's hammer and beat him to death with it. Now the road to Athens along the Isthmus was a safer place to travel, thanks to Theseus. In Athens, the king wanted to see who this man was. When he arrived at the palace, Theseus was a welcome guest.